Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, and this is part 2 of our tutorial on this 3D moving tilting CAD. Today we're going to be tackling the mobile element of this, making it work on mobile. Before we do, we have a very quick overview or review of what we did yesterday, and we're going to kind of come back to this button before we get on with the coding, just to kind of explain a bit more about why this button's here. So without further ado, let's jump back into the bricks builder, have a quick overview. So yesterday what we did was we come along, we built the CAD out, adding all the elements we needed to get this look. And the one thing we sort of did but didn't really talk too much about was this button here. The idea of this button is specifically for iOS 13 and above. So any Apple devices running iOS 13 or more or later, you need to have some kind of user interaction that specifically shows the user's intent to enable the use of the gyroscope data by this website. So the website can kind of pick up on the gyroscope in the Apple device, the iPhone, most devices. But on Apple, you need to give permission for that. And you can't just do this automatically. That was my first intent, was to kind of just, when the page loads, automatically request permission. And unfortunately, that's not allowed. It's not that we can't write the code. We can write the code, and it will work on other devices, especially those, or in particular those running an iOS version prior to iOS 13. But anything after 13, you need to give implicit consent to allow the website to access, well, any data really that's coming from your phone, any sensor data, and we're looking at the gyroscope data. And this is not a complex process. It is really quite easy. We've got a couple of lines of code just to make this happen, but the button's needed to allow us to trigger this. So before we go implementing the code, or at least having a look at the code and getting this working, let's just go and switch this button off, because by default we don't want it to be shown. We only want this to be shown when we're running this on a device on iOS 13 or later. So let's go to, we need to go to the CAD, and we're going to go use our CSS that we wrote yesterday. So we're going to go to the bottom of this where we put the button, the permission button. I'm just going to change the display property to none. And that's it. Let's go up here. We're going to save that, and we're good to go. So now that we've got all that out of the way, we can dive into writing out our JavaScript. And once again, we're going to just walk through this rather than type it all out line by line. So without further ado, let's get stuck into it. But again, I'm going to say to you before we do, if you're enjoying this video, if it's helpful, something you think you'll use in the future, please, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss future videos. So first thing we're going to do, like we did yesterday, we're going to assign. We're going to declare this variable. This time we're going to call it btn for button, and we're going to look for our permission button. And reminding you again, we're talking about this element here, which is currently got a style of display none. And so let's go back here. And so we're going to look for that, and we're going to store it in this variable called btn for button. This is kind of a fairly standard convention. You haven't got to call it btn. You could call it button. You could call it Lamborghini. It doesn't matter what you call it. It's just a variable. But btn or button is makes sense, so we're going to call it btn. So we've got that, and we're going to, it's just going to be kept hold of. That is, we're not going to do anything with it just yet. We'll do something with it in a minute though. And what we're going to do first is we're going to check to see, we're going to use this if statement, and we're going to say if type of device orientation event is not equal to undefined. So this year is not undefined. In other words, what we're saying is this is it's available to us. We're checking to see if this is available. And we haven't got a way of saying is available. What we have got a way of saying is it's not undefined. That's the simplest way of doing that. And then we're going to say, as well as that, so and, that's how when we're doing if statement in JavaScript, to do and, we do two ampersand symbols together. We say again, type of, we're again looking for that device orientation event, and then we're looking for the function called request permission. This was introduced in iOS 13 and is a requirement. As I said before, we can't just, start collecting gyroscopic data without getting the user's permission, and so that's what this function does. If both of these are true, so if that is true and that is true, then we know we're on an iOS device. And so this next one might seem redundant, but it's also true. I'm on a Mac at the moment, and if I didn't do this, then the button would be visible to me. So what we want to know is, are we actually on a mobile device? And before we go any further, we're going to look at this function. So this is a function I've declared. We can call this function whatever we want, but I've called it something that makes sense, is mobile device. And so let's go and scroll down, and here's that function here. So just come down a little bit. We've got this function declared further down, and what that function is doing is we're saying is mobile, and that's a formula, a variable again, and we're using this regular expression pattern, and what we're saying is Android or WebOS or iPhone or iPad or iPod. I mean, this is redundant now, but I'm going to leave it there anyway, just in case, just for backwards compatibility. So basically what we're saying is any of these, with this pipe symbol being our or, are any of these present in something called navigator user agent using the test function? So if any of that's true, then we're almost definitely on mobile. If that comes back false, we're also putting a bit of a fallback, which is kind of perhaps redundant really. We're just going to do another little check, and we're going to say, is the window.matchMedia, so this is we're going to do a check on the media queries, is it less than 766 pixels, the current screen? And if it is, we're going to say that it is on a mobile device. And then the other check we're going to do is, do we have on touch stats? This is saying that there's a touch device. And then the final thing we're going to do is we're going to ask, so again, we're using these pipe symbols to say or. We're going to say, does Navigator have a max touch points? So this is like, typically speaking, on a touchscreen device, there'll be touch points. And what we're saying is, are the number of touch points greater than 0? And if any of these are true, we're going to assume we're on mobile. And so what we're going to do, and so all of these statements in and themselves are kind of like writing an if statement, where these tests all return a true or false answer. So this will equal true if any of these returns true. And so what we're going to do is we're going to return this, and it'll either be true or it'll be false. And if it's true, this will pass. And as this passes, we're going to then go into and do some stuff. So as you know, we captured the button in this variable here, and this is where we're going to interact with it. We're going to say button style set property. So we're setting the property of the style. The property we're going to change is display, and we're going to set the value to block. So now our button will be shown on the screen. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to say button.add event listener. We want to add a click event listener, and then we're going to get permission. That's another function that is declared, and we'll look at that in a moment. But first thing we're going to do is we're going to jump over to here and see if we can't fake the fact that we're on mobile device. No, we can't. So I can't show you that there. The button will show up. Because we need the button, we are going to, tell you what, let's just double check this. Let's put this on that. Let's just say refresh. Yeah. And I get rid of that alert as well, because that's a little frustrating. I've already got rid of the alert. I just need to update the snippet. And So what we're going to do, just so that this will work, is let's go into our CAD and let's find our button in our CSS and let's change this to block. This will happen automatically with that JavaScript code, but because we're not on a mobile device, we're not meeting any of those requirements, it's never going to show up. So let's make it show up. Let's go back here now and press refresh. And just so that we're aware, if we right click anywhere, we go down to the bottom and say inspect. This is in a Chrome based browser. I'm using Microsoft Edge. So we've got the developer window open, and what we're going to do is we're going to come up to these three dots here and we're going to go down to run command, and we want to run the sensors command. There we go. Let's go and do that, and now we've got our sensors available to us. So device, let's do force enabled. Let's see what happens. So that's already enabled. So orientation, let's do a custom orientation. So there's that, and now we can emulate the device movement. As we move it backwards and forward. So yes, so that's us mimicking a device movement. So let's come away from that now. The thing I wanted to show you is when you click on that, you're going to get an alert of asking for permission. And once that permission has been granted, let's go back here. So we're going to run that get permission function. And that is down here, way down here. And so this is an asynchronous function because we have to wait for the response before we do anything else. So we're ringing a try catch. And basically what that means is try all of this. And if at any point something fails, then catch it and capture the error, and then we can output the error somewhere. But in this instance, all I'm going to do is just assume that we'll get an error if we don't give permission. So I'm just saying set the button back to display none, and if there was an error, there was an error, and the functionality just won't work. But assuming that the user does say yes, they grant permission, then everything will be fine. So let's go through that. So we're declaring a variable called permission state. We're using a wait because we need to wait for the user to finish doing what they're doing. So we're saying device orientation event. We're using that request permission. Just as a little reminder, that's what we were looking for up here. You know, very first thing we did, we're saying if this device orientation event is not undefined, and if this request permission equals a function. And so we've decided that that's true. We're now decided it is a mobile device, and we're asking for permission, and we're calling that function request permission. Now that's going to return a true or a false. It's going to return granted or some other value. I'm not quite sure what the opposite to that is. Not granted, but you know, it's going to be granted is what we're looking for. So once we've got that result, we're going to say if permission state equals granted. Again, we're going to now switch off the button. Again, we are now. So earlier on, we set the button to display block. Now we're going to do the same thing, but instead of display block, we're going to say display none to hide it. We could also remove it from the page altogether, and there's various ways we could handle that, but basically we don't want to see it anymore. So that's what that's doing. And then we're going to add an event listener to the window, and we're going to add it to the device orientation event, and whenever that event triggers, we're going to handle orientation. Okay, and that handle orientation is here. We get alpha, beta, and gamma, and all we're interested in is the tilting back and forth and the tilting sort of left and right. We're not sort of interested in that motion of rotating the device, sort of like if it was holding it in front of you, rotating it like say a clock face in front of you. So we're not. That's what the alpha will give you, but the beta and the gamma are going to give you the movements similar to the mouse movements. So just going to go up here to remind myself which way around these are. So the X rotation is the kind of tilting it back and forth. So beta is X. We're just knocking 45 degrees off it so that it deducting the default value, the state of it, because otherwise it's too far forward. And so what we want is to get the not 45 degrees off of it. And what I would say to you, if you're not sure exactly what I mean by that, is just change the numbers, remove that altogether and see what it does. Just get rid of that and just see what happens. It will continue to work. It just might not give you the desired results. In fact, it probably won't give you the desired results because I've tried it. So there's your back and forth. Here's your kind of swiveling the left and right. We're saying -1 because I wanted to invert this, because I want it to kind of look like the card is always trying to face you. I don't want it to fall away from you as you tilt the phone. If you don't invert it, it looks like as you tilt the phone to the side, it starts falling over. And maybe that's the look you want. That's fine, you know. But the look I wanted was to make the card always trying to face me. Now, again, I would say play around with it. Remove that and see what it looks like. And then all we're doing is we're just setting the properties again. So a bit like what we did up here, we set the style properties, so rotate Y and rotate X, CSS variables. We're doing the same thing in essence here. We're just saying, where's our handle orientation gone? Here it is. We're saying set the rotate X variable to X rotation. I'm saying divide by 3 because I don't want it to be so dramatic. Again, change these numbers, remove all of that, see what it looks like, see if you like that. But I liked this kind of look. If you did this, it would be more severe. So making this number smaller would make the orientation changes more dramatic. Making it a bigger number will make it more subtle. But you give it a try, play around with it, and play around those numbers and see what you prefer. And that is pretty much it. The only thing is, there is another place in which we call this. And essentially what we're saying is, if this is some kind of device with a gyroscope in it that's like, say, a tablet device, say like a Windows Surface or something like that, or some other device that has a gyroscope in it, then go ahead and add the event listener anyway. This is not going to add it to the event. It's not going to add this event listener if there is no gyroscope, but if there is a gyroscope, then or that functionality is available in the window, then go and add it anyway. Go and handle orientation anyway, and that's as simple as that. Any questions, any comments, any feedback for this video, please leave them in the comments below. And happy coding. I'll speak to you again soon. Peace out.